My name is Eric Range. I'm the Vice President of Product here at Element 451. But before coming to Element, I was on campuses just like all of you. I spent 7 years in an admissions office at a small liberal arts college that had graduate programs and undergraduate programs and a theological school. Did 2 CRM implementations in those 7 years. I don't suggest that. Element was my last one, and that was far easier to do than the prior one. And I kicked off my higher education career in student affairs, residence life. I'm old enough that we still called it judicial affairs, not student conduct, and spent a lot of time in student life and residence life as well. So I know all of the pains that you guys go through and how we're able to do some of this work with you and make agents help you get things done better. So none of this will be a surprise to anyone in this room, but our admissions and enrollment offices, and frankly, all of our offices on campuses, are challenged with doing more with less all the time in the higher ed space. In the last 10 years, we've seen a 60% increase in the total number of undergraduate applications filed, more applications per student. So students are applying more places, which they can only go to one. So that makes yield more difficult. We're seeing our admissions staffs have shorter tenures. When I left the admissions office 7-ish years ago, that tenure was like 3 to 4 years. And now we're 2, sometimes only 18 months for that, first time admissions counselor. So a lot of knowledge and a lot of institutional knowledge walks out the door very, very quickly. And vacancies, of course, abound in the higher ed space, where 60%, 6 in 10 admissions offices say they have vacancies that they can't fill. So this is where both agents can really come in and assist all of us doing more with less. So we talked this morning at the product keynote about a few of these agents, and we'll actually show one of our proactive agents as well. So we've got 2 agents that are specifically designed to amplify the work that your teams are doing, kind of back office, the unseen work of an admissions office, reading those files, detecting, hey, this is the 5th application we've gotten from Susie123@gmail.com and Susie1234@gmail.com, and they all have the same address. What's going on with that, right? But that takes a lot of time. Reading all of those essays and transcripts and making sure that they haven't uploaded a picture of their cat to their transcript file, right? So these are all things that take a lot of our time, when what we as staff should be doing is connecting with our prospective students, connecting with our applicants and the families, and really driving them to be part of our communities. And of course, that admissions advisor agent is available omni-channel, multi-channel, to talk to the students, help them with what we'll call routine inquiries, right? Things that, you could sit there on the phone all day long and go, yes, the next open house is next week. Yes, the next open house is next week. Or they can engage an agent in that. So the way our fraud detection agent works is it looks at a number of factors when students apply through an Element application. So it looks at things like timing. How fast did the student complete the application? Very few students are going to go through an application in 90 seconds, right? Adding their high school information, adding other things, right? So if they're doing their application unusually fast, that could be a sign of someone who is copying and pasting. And a lot of fraud that is happening these days are not automated bots coming in and completing the applications. They're literally people behind keyboards farming in to the application to be more human-like, but there's still some telltale signs. We look at duplicates for multiple applications or similar profiles where a lot of the information looks similar, it's just changed a little bit. We look at the email addresses they're using. Does that email address have any history with it? Does it have high bounce rates? Is it from a disposable service? Phone number validity. The phone numbers they're putting in, we look to do a carrier match. We also look at identity match. Now, the identity match isn't perfect because a lot of 17-year-olds, the identity match will come back to mom or dad, right? But we can find addresses, we can find similar things. And with all of these, no one thing will say automatically fraud, right? They all work together, and the AI actually reasons through all of the data individually. And we'll actually see an example in a minute where it actually says this one thing appears to be fraudulent, but overall, we're saying that the application looks good. We look at the IP address information of where that application was submitted from. We look at, are they using a VPN? Again, just using a VPN in and of itself is not necessarily fraudulent activity. We feed it to a large language model with some special instructions, and within 2 or 3 minutes, the application, after the submission of the application, we'll have marked that as potential fraud, high risk, low risk, etc. And we've seen this surge in fraud really in the last couple of years. And this fraud detection is actually one of the things where Element really pivoted very quickly on this. At the beginning of the cycle, as August hit, fraudulent applications have been a thing, but the start of this 2025 application cycle, we had many of you in this room reach out and say, I don't know what's going on, but we got more fraudulent applications than we know what to do with. That was the end of August. By the first week in October, we had launched the first version of the app fraud detection agent. So that's the power of these large language models and the power of AI, where we can actually go in and very quickly iterate on some of these things. But why are we seeing that fraud increase? Because there's money to be made, right? So in California, the community college system, 34% of all of their applications in 2024 were potentially fraudulent, and $13 million of aid walked out the door in California alone, with $100 million walking out the door across the country. But using our AI fraud detection, our friends at Kellogg Community College have seen our fraud detection be 94% accurate, and in 1 week, they caught 186 applications, and we only marked one highly fraudulent or high-risk application that turned out to be legitimate. So really powerful using AI to do this work. So let's take a look at the interface here, and you can see some of the reasoning behind this. So if I come into our decisions and open Jimmy's application here, I can come in and I can open his application that's marked as high risk, and I get a really good summary of all of the reasons why Bolt's fraud detection has classified this as a potentially fraudulent application. The entire application was completed in 12 seconds. That doesn't sound like a regular student, right? Far too fast for the general application. The email address, we use a third-party service, is marked at risky. It is actually from a disposable free domain, and so on and so forth, down through the things. Again, some of these items you could see. Some of these things, the staff member could never really connect the dots. Oh, sorry. Likewise, so when you review this, you have the option to actually then mark this as fraud, confirm it, or mark it as legitimate if you look in and you look at some of the documents or other things to say, no, this one's okay, we're going to send it through the regular process. If I step back out and I can look at another application, And here's a low risk one. And again, sort of the same reasoning. This application took 13 minutes, which is probably still a little speedy for an application. But it looks at when that application was submitted, right? You may get an application at 3 a.m., that student's local time, but that's not a normal behavior. So combined with other factors, that may raise some things. Information around the IP address and a legitimate phone number, which is good because this record has my phone number on it. So I'm glad that we're coming back legitimate here on the phone number. So these are all the signals that we're using to do this very, very quickly. So that is AI fraud detection. As I mentioned earlier today, this is included with our new admissions agent teams that most of you have been upgraded to this morning. So let's talk a little bit about the application reader agent. This is a really, really powerful tool. And the favorite phrase I love using is making every read a second read. So your first read is going to be that second read, and that saves hours and hours and hours of time for us as staff members who don't otherwise have to dig deep into some of these things and, evaluate all of these essays and sit there and count 1, 2, 3, 4 AP classes, 1, 2, 3, 4 honors classes, right? It understands your criteria, your documents, and of course, the final decision on who's admissible and who's not rests with us, the staff. As I mentioned, a holistic first read can take anywhere from 20 to 45 minutes, and second reads tend to be much quicker, half the time, a third of the time. So think about getting all of that time back, and now you can reach out to students, you can connect with them, have those programs, and frankly, that's more meaningful work for all of us too, right? Connecting with students and their families. So let's take a look real quickly at the application reader agent. And the first thing I want to do is show you a little bit about where you can configure this right in Element. So if you are a decisions administrator, you can come into your decision settings and come to your criteria. And many of you who are already using decisions already have your criteria set up, right? So this is going to use the existing criteria that you have in your decisions. And it is as simple as coming into the decision and setting up one additional field. This whole process runs on one additional field of information that you have to give it. And frankly, this is how you might explain evaluating this criteria to that admissions counselor, right? Or, other people, an application reader who's coming in seasonally, right? Who you've got to train to do that. You're going to sit down with them and you're going to say, look at the GPA from the transcripts, compare it to, our average, consider the difficulty of the coursework, right? This is literally what you would be telling staff members who need to do the same work. For students with a 3.5 or higher, and 3 AP courses or honors, they should have a 7 to a 10 score. So I'm actually giving the rubric right in the instructions here. And some of these are not just simple like, oh, if it's this, then, right? Like, oh, if these, they have to have AP and a GPA and evaluate all of that. Can add or remove up to 1 point for students that make either steady improvements over time or show sudden, that should be unexplained declines, but in all my testing, it knew what I was talking about. So that's even better. And when they have those unexplained declines, maybe we want to take a point away for academic performance, right? Because we don't know what's going on there. So in literal minutes, you can come through each of your decision criteria and add similar things and similar instructions to the bolt analysis, so the reader agent understands what it is that you want on the evaluation. Once that's set up, you just literally go to your decision board and tell it at what stages you want to either enable or disable the Bolt Reader agent. When the application enters that stage, we'll run the process and it'll be waiting for you. When we come back to an actual application then, just like we saw on the fraud detection agent, we get a really nice summary of what the overall for the whole application, right? This is the summary, highly qualified, some nice bullet points around each of the criteria. But then it comes down and you can actually see the score and the rationale for that score. And this takes 3, 4, 5 minutes, depending on how many criteria you're running. And each time it'll look for the individual documents, so you can actually see what documents it's using to back up its rationale. And it gives you, frankly, better application reader notes than I ever made when I was reading applications. So, really detailed and really clear to understand from the human perspective, right? From the staff perspective, you can really understand what it's done and why it's done that. You can also provide additional feedback. So here it will actually give you more details on its individual reasoning and the steps that it took to come through and evaluate each of these. And you can actually watch this in real time if you wanted to rerun it and watch it go through the process. So that's Application Reader. Again, the really powerful piece of making every application that you all have to touch a second read and the amount of time that saves. And then, of course, we have our student-facing agents for admissions as well. So there are a number of them that are included in Element now. We have a recruiter agent. We have our admission advisors agents that you can configure. And we showed you a little bit about that during the product keynote. But these are the agents that are going to both proactively and reactively support students 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, always on via web chat, SMS, making phone calls, receiving phone calls, and on WhatsApp Business, if that's a channel you guys are interested in using. All of the agents, when they contact a student, have the context of that student. So it knows where the student lives. It knows what program the student is involved in. It knows if a staff member had a conversation with that student yesterday, right? And it can take all of that context and understand what the next best thing to do is for that student. So this advisor agent may come and try to reach out to a student, but see, hey, Eric just had a conversation with this applicant yesterday. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me 18 hours later to have a conversation. I'm going to go to sleep for a little while and I'm going to wake up tomorrow, and that's a better time for me to have a communication. In your admissions office, somebody or multiple somebodies whose job it is every morning they come to work and they open conversations and they open a segment and they look at everybody who submitted an inquiry form last night, since yesterday, over the weekend, whatever. How many? All right, quite a few hands, right? That is a lot of tedious work. And a lot of you are probably using a save to reply for that, right? So there's lots of ways to automate that in Element today using workflows or other things. But we know there are partners out there that they like that one-on-one feeling and that text message. You may be using text messages for that, and it's a little more personal, and it is, right? But that's still a lot of time. I call it the 1,000 monkeys behind 1,000 keyboards, right? 1,000 monkeys behind 1,000 typewriters, and you've got just your staff doing this all day, chatting with students, which is fine. And when things escalate, that's important. And when there's a complex problem, that's important. But what if somebody didn't have to do that for the 25 inquiry submissions that came in last night? And we could see that in real time. And maybe Eric wants to get a text message, and we know that because he always opens our text messages, but he never opens our email. But Artis always opens his email. So this is one of those things where the agent can decide the best channel to connect with that particular prospect. So let's jump in here and take a look at our Element University nursing program here. We've got an inquiry form. Jed Bartlett is all ready to apply to be a nurse, and we're going to go ahead and submit this form. Okay, the one time that all right, what other crosswalks do I have here, people? I need an agent for this. Gee. Maybe? I don't see any more crosswalks, people. Oh, hit verify. There you go. You have to user error. There we go. Woo!
You're sure now that'd be for an application.
Probably because I've been submitting fraudulent applications all night, trying to get my demos to work. So, student has just submitted that inquiry form, and I've got our job set up to do some things immediately. You may not do that, right? You may let the agent decide when things happen. But in just a few minutes, we're going to kick off a whole series of communications, and here it is. We've got Element University calling me here. So let's pick up.
Hello. May I speak with Jed Bartlett, please?
This is Jed.
Hi, Jed. This is Casey, the AI assistant calling from Element University. I'm reaching out to encourage you to start your application for our nursing programs for fall 2025. We offer several options, including associate degree in nursing, practical nursing, nurse aide, and KMA certifications. We're located in the Research Triangle of North Carolina, which is a great place for healthcare and education. Would you like help getting started with your application, or would you prefer details on how to schedule a campus visit?
Yeah, I'm just not sure I'm ready to apply quite yet, but I'd love to come and see the campus.
That's a great choice, Jed. Visiting the campus is a perfect way to get a feel for the school and the nursing program. We offer daily campus tours, special nursing department tours by appointment, and virtual options if you prefer. Would you like to schedule an in-person tour, a nursing department visit?
Could you send me information on booking a campus tour?
I've just sent a text message to your phone with the link to book a campus tour. Once you open it, you can choose a daily tour, a nursing department visit.
Great, I just got that text message and I gotta go, so thanks so much. And they can be a lot shorter with their agent than they might be with you, so that's always the plus too. And while we were on the phone, I did get that text message, so this is another way that the agents can be very reactive to what the student wants, right? If I'd said I'm ready to apply, she would have sent me the link to our application portal. And in one click, all of these, we use our magic link, our Element magic links, because we know who the student is that we're contacting. So their event form or their application portal, if they haven't signed up yet, will be pre-populated with some of the information that they're using. So really powerful ways for students to connect in real time and get their questions answered. But let's take a look at kind of the backside of this particular job and how it was set up. So here we used all three channels, and I can actually come in to conversations and see all of the communications that that agent just sent. Because while I was standing here, I also got a text message from, I got a text message about filling out the inquiry form, and I also got an email. So if I come here to conversations, well, and clearly Petter is in another room doing a, so here's the phone call that we had, right? So right in within the conversations, I can see the whole transcript of that phone call that I had with the agent. I can also play the recording, so you can actually play the actual recording so you can understand what the agent said and how it said it. Here is the email that it put together for me very quickly with a lot of that same information, right? And the text message as well. So if I come into the agent, the jobs itself here, you can configure what channels you want, the email addresses and the phone numbers it's going to use. And again, simple instructions on how you want the agent to approach the problem. Now here I'm saying always contact people on the first or via phone on the first try, right? And that's largely because I wanted to make sure I got a phone, right? But you could do that if you always want a text message to be the first touch point, or you always want a phone call to be the first touch point. So, and I've actually said on the initial outreach, use all three channels right away. Again, not super realistic, not something you would probably do. But as we move further down here, you can see that I've said in the instructions that I want to highlight the students and the location of Element University in the research triangle. So it will actually use the context that it got from that inquiry form where I submitted my address. And I come from New Jersey. So it highlighted for me that Element University was in the research triangle in North Carolina. If I had submitted an address from North Carolina, it would have talked about the benefits of studying close to home and the connection to your existing community. So you can see how very easily you can, give these instructions and very quickly get these jobs up and running. And that was as good or way better than, a student worker trying to wrangle them to make those calls every day and making sure that they're not saying something that they're not supposed to say and all those things that come with student workers or student ambassadors. So really, really quickly to set up and connect all of these. Few other things I want to point out is just the goals here is these. In this particular case, the goal was to drive that student to start an application. And in this case, I was really wanting to make sure that I'm only interested in a certain term in a certain program, but those are optional scopes. And the actions that are available. And this is really interesting, right? Because I can tell it to promote a certain application, a certain major, but I've also given it the ability to promote events like campus tours and open houses. So this whole process, and I did not use the agent builder for this, but even manually, this whole process takes 5 minutes and you can be up and running, testing your first communication, and you're off to the races. So it's really, really powerful stuff. And frankly, tools I wish I had, a decade ago, sitting in marketing operations. So, yeah. And with that, if there are any questions about any of those agents, Brendan will find a microphone here.
What is the time frame that you're using for the speed of application when you're evaluating it for fraud? So our application is very simple. We're an open enrollment institution. Our application on an average basis takes about 6 minutes. We ask bare minimum IPEDS information, student at entry. Every single application we receive is marked as medium to high level fraud because of the speed of the application.
Yep. 10 minutes? 15 minutes. You helped build it. Roman, one of our engineers. I think it's about 10 minutes. Now you can give feedback in the interface, right? And if you consistently see that, say, our application is, a sub 5-minute application. Yep.
And that's also data that's found in insights, right? On speed of application or time on application, correct?
We're using the milestones from the start of the application to the submission. Yeah. So if they leave and come back, that clock is running the whole time.
Perfect. Thanks.
Needed the mic here, and I will repeat the question. Absolutely.
All right. Any other questions? Come over here. Somebody.
Yeah, just say it out loud and we'll repeat the question for you as well. We have a couple of the engineers here who built some of these features, so I wanted to make sure that we can answer any other questions. Go ahead.
So the bot followed you, and the bot found is a bot, right? And remember when you were able to and they want you to vote? I would have already come up. So if somebody bought the bot go to Steam to see what things up, are you still getting the text of AOV?
So the next time the agent wakes up and sees a very short phone call, and you have a text message as another possible opportunity, it will continue to have that student enrolled towards that goal, and it will use the other channels available to it in that case.
So the answer is it will know to use multiple channels. So it won't.
You're on the call. While you're on the call,
Yes. Yeah.
you're hanged up. They're not going to get a text right away. So
No, they will. They will. And that's right. And that's the beauty of it, is that the timing in between doesn't matter. It reasons about, what to do next. And if the answer is, hey, this person just hung up on me, then it can think about, well, maybe I should send a text message right away. Yeah.
Or an email or what.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the really nice part. I think there was a question over here. Yep.
yeah, if something crazy coming through that what scale or my sunshine might say Dr. What didn't hit all rows and
Right. So the answer is no. We don't have that transcript evaluation yet. If you remember from the keynote, that's coming later this year, where we're going to look at and pull actual. We're going to look at your transfer tables and things like that. So we're going to look at those other apps, those other tables. But right now, it just does the extraction, and it understands what the data is, and you can tell it in very simple words to look for certain, I won't say keywords, but look for certain subjects or whatever it is. And it has enough reasoning that it knows the equivalencies and so on and so forth. So it's smart enough to understand that. But it doesn't have a hard-coded translation table, so it can look those things up. And that's coming later, when it's going to do things like putting that data directly into your SIS, for example, as it extracts data. One thing that's really, really important that we should mention is that we changed the model that's actually reasoning through that application evaluation. And Roman here can tell you a little bit more, or should I? Yeah. Sorry for kind of stealing your thunder, but so we're using the most recent O3 model from OpenAI, which is the smartest reasoning model right now. And it's able to go through, and it's able to reason for about anywhere between just a few seconds to a few minutes, or even many minutes, right? 10, 15, 20 minutes around specific data. So the more data it has, the more it reasons through, it churns through and says, okay, I'm going to go through this part now. I'm going to reason through depending on what the question is, or depending on what the criteria is. So it's really smart. So between 2 weeks ago, when we introduced the newest model, and before then, the process has gotten so much better. So as we introduce better and better models, they're going to become really, really good on some of this. And it's what we're doing, just to give you guys a little bit of a technical implementation. So every document that gets submitted, every document that gets submitted, we convert it into an image. So essentially, we scan all of the documents, and then we give it to these reasoning models, same way that you would upload something to ChatGPT or whatever. And now they go through one by one and they reason through. So they have all of those as different pictures. And because these models are multimodal, it can reason in images. It understands everything that it's seeing, and it's able to pull that information out and then reason through all of that data. So it's pretty powerful. Another question.
That's a kind of, but it was more so first and middle that transcript after upper, and then they
Yeah. It will look, so when you look, it looks at, it's very scoped to the application. When one of the things that we introduced this year, which is amazing, is for a lot of you, you're like, well, we have this criteria and we use different criteria for the undergraduate app versus the graduate app versus this program. And one of the things that we did, which unlocks the ability to have different criteria for different types of applications, that's kind of, so now you can build evaluations that are different for each one. So you don't have to have it for just the undergraduate app where you might look at the transcript and a recommendation, whereas for the graduate app or nursing, it can look for different documents. And those documents are also whatever the reader sees when it goes to read application, the AI has access to all of that stuff as well. Yeah. Last question. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. The answer is yes. So, I'm going back and forth with some of the product team, and I'm like, well, guys, let's just get this out there, release it so people can start using it. And then the compliance at the individual state level, like, let's add that a couple of weeks or a month after we release it. So the answer is yes. There will be fine-grained control on what the agents can do. And you can see it already in the things that the reasoning or the guardrails that you can set up, right, at the individual action level. So because it has all the context, you can technically put in there, like we just have to expose that little and put that instruction to say, look at here's the recording rules for each state, and then try to get them consent if you try to record.
And in the greeting, you can actually configure the greeting. So in a one-party state or a two-party state, you can actually say, hello, my name is Eric, the AI agent, and I'm, this call is being recorded. Doesn't cover all of what you just said, but it covers like 90% of the compliance issues there.
Awesome.
And that's it, everybody.
Let's hear it for Eric.